I still remember the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke from that night. Even now, whenever I walk past a crowded bar, it all comes back to me at once. It had only been about 3 weeks since I finally broke things off with my ex, George. Calling the relationship toxic honestly doesn't even cover it. He was controlling in ways I didn't notice at first. He hated when I went out with friends, hated when I didn't answer immediately, hated basically anything that didn't involve him. Toward the end, he got paranoid too. He always accused me of cheating or talking to other guys behind his back. When I finally left him, he didn't take it well. He sent long texts about how I ruined his life. Then came the insults. Then the apologies. Then the threats about making me regret it. After a while, I blocked him everywhere and tried to move on. For the first time in months, I actually felt free. That night, my friends convinced me to go downtown with them. Nothing crazy, just drinks and music to get my mind off things. It was me, my best friend Kayla, and our friend Richard. At around midnight, we were getting ready to leave when Richard suddenly started patting his pockets. "Wait," he said, face going pale. "I don't have my wallet." We checked the table, the floor, even the bathroom. Nothing. Then he realized his phone was gone too. At first, we thought someone at the bar stole both. It sucked, but it happens. Then my phone rang. I looked down and saw Richard's name on the screen. "Oh, thank God," Kayla said. "Answer it." I picked up immediately. "Richard. Hello." Nothing. Not static. Not breathing. Just silence. "Dude, quit messing around," I said, annoyed. The call ended. A few seconds later, Kayla's phone rang too. "Richard again." She answered on speaker. "Hello, Salenza." We all stared at each other. "What the hell?" Richard muttered. At this point, Ivan, he looked uncomfortable. We used Find My iPhone to track his phone, expecting it to still be at the bar. But it wasn't. The location showed his phone moving, straight toward our apartment complex. I remember the feeling that hit my stomach when I saw the little dot stop directly over our building. Kayla laughed nervously. "Okay, that's not funny." Richard swore under his breath. Someone must have taken it. But why go to our apartment? Primera, ask it. Nobody answered. The Uber ride home felt way longer than it actually was. I kept checking the app every few seconds, hoping the location would move again. It didn't. It stayed perfectly still at our apartment. When we finally got there, the parking lot was empty. No suspicious cars. No people hanging around. But the second we got upstairs, something felt wrong. The apartment door wasn't fully shut. It was cracked open just slightly. I froze. "I know I locked it," Kayla whispered. Richard pushed the door open slowly while I stood behind him with my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd throw up. The apartment was dark. Quiet. Nobody inside. No signs of forced entry either. Then Richard pointed at the kitchen counter. His phone was sitting there, right in the middle of the counter, next to his wallet, like someone had carefully placed them there. I remember feeling cold all over. Richard grabbed his phone immediately and checked it. No recent calls. Nothing. But that wasn't even the creepiest part. The battery was at 2%. There was no way someone had been repeatedly calling us from it for almost an hour. We ended up checking every closet and room before finally convincing ourselves nobody was there. Still shaken, we stayed up most of the night talking about it. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it was probably some drunk person messing with us. I wish that had been true. Over the next few weeks, I started getting calls from random unknown numbers almost every day. Always late at night. Always silence. Sometimes they'd call 5 or 6 times in a row. I stopped answering after a while, but they kept coming. Then the voicemails started. Empty voicemails. No talking. Just faint background noise. One of them sounded like breathing. Another sounded like footsteps on gravel. I changed my phone number after about a month because I couldn't take it anymore. For 2 days, it stopped. Then my Instagram direct messages exploded. At first it was random accounts with no profile pictures. "You think you can ignore me? You ruined everything." I immediately knew it was George. The wording sounded exactly like him. I blocked the accounts, but new ones kept appearing. Some messages included things nobody else would know. Things about my apartment, about where I worked, about what I wore that day. Then one night I got a message that made my blood run cold. Look outside. I remember staring at the screen for a solid minute before slowly walking to the window. There was a car parked across the street, headlights off, engine running. I couldn't see inside because of the tinted windows. Then the car slowly drove away. I called the police after that. They told me to document everything, but because the accounts were fake and the calls were blocked numbers, there wasn't much they could do. For a while, nothing happened. Then Richard called me one afternoon, sounding terrified. Someone had broken into his car. Nothing was stolen, but on his steering wheel there was a printed photo of me, walking into work, taken from far away. That's when we stopped treating it like harassment and started treating it like actual stalking. We started comparing dates and realized something horrifying every time I got one of the silent calls. One of my friends noticed someone weird around them shortly after. A man sitting in a car nearby. Someone standing too long outside the apartment building. A hooded figure near Richard's job. George wasn't just watching me. He was watching all of us. The police finally took it seriously when Kayla found an AirTag hidden underneath her car. They traced the serial number back to a fake account, but security footage from the electronics store showed George buying it. That gave detectives enough to get a warrant. When they searched his apartment, they found hundreds of photos of me, some taken through my apartment window, some from outside my work, some from that night at the bar. Then they found something worse, a burner phone filled with recordings. Every silent call had been recorded. He'd sit there listening to us panic without saying a word. But the part that still messes with me the most was what police found on his laptop. A folder labeled Plans. Inside were screenshots of our addresses, schedules, routines, and a document where he wrote about wanting to scare me enough to come back. The final line said, "If she still won't listen, I'll make her." George was arrested before he could do whatever that meant. He ended up pleading guilty to stalking, harassment, and unlawful surveillance. I moved to states away after the trial. I changed my number again. Got cameras installed everywhere. But sometimes, usually late at night, I still wake up expecting my phone to ring. And every now and then, it does. This happened when I was 22 years old. I'm 35 now, and even after all this time, I still check over my shoulder whenever I walk to my car at night. For privacy and safety reasons, I'll be changing the names of everyone involved. Back then, I was attending a small community college while working part-time at a coffee shop. My life was honestly pretty normal. I lived with my friend Mia, and most of my time was split between work, classes, and hanging out with a small friend group. Nothing about me stood out. I wasn't popular, didn't have enemies, and I definitely never expected to end up being stalked. The first time I noticed him was during my psychology class. He sat near the back every day. Tall, skinny guy, always wearing the same gray hoodie, no matter how hot it was outside. I never learned his real name, because he barely spoke to anyone. But people called him Ghost, because he moved around campus so quietly. At first, he just seemed socially awkward, but after a few weeks, I realized he stared at me constantly. Not normal glances either. I mean, full-on, staring without blinking. I'd look over during lectures and catch him already watching me. One day after class, he stopped me in the parking lot. "You dropped this," he said. He handed me a silver bracelet. The problem was, it wasn't mine. "Oh," I said awkwardly. "I think you got the wrong person." He stared at me for a couple seconds, too long before slowly smiling. "Right," he said quietly. "Sorry." Something about him immediately unsettled me. After that interaction, things started escalating slowly. At first, I'd notice him around campus way more often. Then he somehow started showing up at my job. He'd sit alone for hours, drinking coffee and watching me work. Never reading. Never on his phone. Who's watching? Mia thought it was creepy too. One night after work, she joked, "You've got your own little serial killer fan club." I laughed at the time. I wish I hadn't. About a month later, I walked out to my car after my evening class and found a sticky note under my windshield wiper. "You look pretty when you're tired." I remember my stomach immediately dropping because I had complained earlier that day to Mia about barely sleeping, meaning whoever wrote it had either overheard us or had been listening nearby. I told campus security, but because the note wasn't technically a threat, they brushed it off. I started getting paranoid after that. I'd look behind me, walking home. I stopped going anywhere alone after dark. Then one Friday night, Mia and I came home after getting food with friends. The apartment felt weird immediately. The kitchen light was on. We were both positive we turned it off before leaving. Mia looked at me nervously. "Did you leave it on?" "No!" Then Mia screamed from my bedroom. Someone had moved my furniture. Not dramatically, hoosed slightly. My desk angled differently. My closet door cracked open, and sitting on my pillow was another sticky note. "You should lock your windows." I actually threw up after reading it. Police came that night and dusted for fingerprints, but they didn't find much. The officer told us it was probably a prank. I could tell even he didn't believe that. After that, things spiraled fast. Whoever it was started leaving small things outside my apartment door. A flower, a necklace, a photo of me walking across campus. That photo changed everything. It was taken from far away, hidden behind trees near the parking lot. I was being watched for a while. One night, Mia and I were studying in the living room when we heard footsteps outside our apartment window, slow crunching, on gravel, back and forth, back and forth. Mia peeked through the blinds and immediately ducked down. "There's someone out there." I looked too. It was him. The guy from class, standing perfectly still in the dark, just staring directly at our apartment. I called 911 while Mia locked herself in the bathroom crying, but by the time police arrived, he was gone. Campus security finally took me seriously after that and pulled parking lot footage from previous weeks. That's when they realized the same guy's car had been repeatedly following me off campus, sometimes for miles. But the worst part came a few days later. I got home from work and found my bedroom window open. On my bed was a cassette tape. No note. No explanation. Just the tape. I didn't even own a cassette player, but Mia's dad did. We drove to his house that night and listened to it together. It was me. My conversations, recorded through my apartment walls and windows. There were hours of recordings. Me talking to Mia. Phone calls with my mom. Even recordings of me sleeping. At one point on the tape, you could hear my bedroom window slowly sliding open, then breathing. Close to the microphone, Mia's dad immediately called police. Police eventually identified the guy from my psychology class after reviewing security footage and reports from campus security. Turns out he wasn't even supposed to be enrolled anymore. He'd dropped out the previous semester, but continued sneaking onto campus almost daily. He was arrested shortly after and charged with stalking, unlawful surveillance, and breaking into our apartment. I moved out of state not long after. 4 years afterward, I couldn't sleep near open windows, and even now, at 35 years old, I still get nervous whenever I notice someone staring too long in public. Because all it takes is one person, one obsessed stranger, and your entire life can turn into a nightmare.